So, we're very pleased to have John Corrigan back for part 2 of his 3-part series on personal productivity. Last time John spoke, he mentioned there were 3 aspects, and so today we're focusing on attention. I just wanted to ask, has anybody had a drastic change in the way they deal with email following last week's presentation? Johnny said he pressed Control or Delete a number of times. Ross, how did you go? Working? Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? I've only got I had 8 emails in my inbox last night, but then I came in this morning, there were loads more, so I kind of had a bit of an overhaul as well. But it's amazing what a difference it makes to the sense of kind of space in your mind when you get to your inbox and you go, oh, that's something I've got to do today, rather than, oh shit, there's lots in here. So anyway, thank you very much, John.
Great, thank you. So, time, attention, and energy are the 3 things that we need to manage our own personal productivity. And today we're going to look at attention. So this is going to be like a mini workshop. So you're going to do quite a lot of work as we go through over the next hour. So, managing attention, there are 3 areas that we need to manage. And the first of those is how we respond to things. So something occurs, we meet somebody, an idea arises. The question is, how do we respond to that? So what form of attention do we use? We have 5 different forms of attention. That is 5 ways that we can interact with the world that trigger the brain differently. And the ones that are important for us in terms of responding to a person or an incident or an idea is, first of all, sustained attention. And in a minute you'll see what that means. But sustained attention typically leads to acceptance. So something occurs and we simply accept it as it is. So that's one of the characteristics of sustained attention. And the other one is focused attention. And focused attention triggers comparing and categorizing within our minds. So sustained attention and focused attention are 2 forms of attention we can use when responding to something. Now, I want you to experience these different forms of attention. So I'm going to tell you a little story. And as I'm telling you this story, I'd like you to pay attention to me, obviously. But as you're paying attention, can you monitor what's happening in your mind as you're paying attention? So what, if anything, is coming into your mind, and what, if anything, you're doing with it? Okay? So I have a great interest in our education systems. And in May 2001, I had an opportunity to interview a teacher that subsequently I described as an outstanding teacher. So this is a teacher who had no discipline problems. She delivered above average academic outcomes. And importantly, she caused children to want to engage in their learning. Now this woman she was 60, she looked 45. When you saw around the school, which was a secondary school, Balmain High School in fact, in a mixed socio-economic area, she always had a gaggle of children around her. So she clearly loved teaching and they clearly loved being with her. And I spent about 2 hours talking with her. And one thing she said to me has stayed with me ever since. In fact, has shaped what I've done ever since. And what she said to me was, in my 30 years of teaching, I've never had a discipline problem. Yet in this school, there are 2 or 3 teachers whose sole objective on entering the classroom is to survive to the end of the lesson. And I thought then, what is she doing that makes her so effective? And why aren't the others doing it? Now, can you turn to somebody close to you in 2s or 3s and just share what was happening in your mind as you were listening to that story? Okay, let's bring that back to the whole group again. So would anybody like to share what was happening in their mind as they were listening to that story? So a lot happening inside your mind, yeah? So again, a lot going on in your mind. So would it be true to say that for most of you, there was a lot going on in your mind as you were listening to that story? Well, you've just experienced focused attention. Focused attention is we focus in on something and our brain starts to process it. And if we pull up memories, our brain actually sends a signal to the ear to switch the ear off. So we physically stop listening to somebody when we're listening in focused attention mode. So one of the downsides of focused attention mode is that we're actually not listening completely to the other person. And if the thing that we're responding to is confronting to us, in fact, we might not listen at all to the other person. So one of the downsides of focused attention is that we're not really listening. And a second downside is that we can slip very easily into judgment, into judging what's happening as we are responding. So that's focused attention. Let's practice now, or let's experience now, sustained attention. This we need to do in pairs, so in twos. So in the pair, one of you is going to be a speaker, and one of you is going to be a listener. And when you're the speaker, just talk about where you are in your professional life journey. So simply talk about where you are in your professional life journey. But as the listener, you have some specific things to do. You can acknowledge the other person, but otherwise you're just going to listen. And you're going to allow what's being said to flow past you. So you're standing in the river, letting the water flow past you. But then pick up out of the current key words or key emotions that you're hearing. So that at the end of the period, which is going to be 45 seconds, you can say back to the person what it is that you've heard. And if you have any attention left, look in the person's eyes. Okay? So take your attention off yourself, put your attention into their eyes. Okay, so as the speaker, you're just going to speak about where you're on a professional life journey. You get 45 seconds, which is either a long time or a short time, depending on how much you speak. But as the listener, acknowledge, allow it to flow past, pick out keywords and emotions, focus your attention on their eyes if you've got any left. Okay? So in pairs, get yourselves ready. Choose who's going to be speaker one, and I'm going to count you in. I'm going to count you in. Go as a three if there's not two. Okay, I'm going to count you in. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, listeners, feedback what you've heard. Listeners, feedback what you've heard. Okay, let's pause there. Let's pause there. We're now going to swap, so speaker become listener, listener becomes speaker. Again, speak about where you are in your professional life journey. Listener, acknowledge, let it flow past keywords, emotions, focus in the other person's eyes. I'm going to count you in. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, listeners, feedback what you've heard. Feedback what you've heard. Okay, let's pause there. Let's pause there. So when you were the speaker in that exercise, when you were the speaker, did you feel listened to? Yeah, good. What else? What else was happening for you as you were being listened to in this way? What was happening to your thinking? What was happening to your feelings? Yeah. Yeah. Generally people say that when they're listened to in this way, they take care in what they're saying. They don't want to just talk rubbish. So they're honouring the fact they're being listened to by talking in a careful way. What else? What else happens?
I can see when there's had a thought, like latched onto one of my thoughts, and I felt like I wanted to ask a question. So strange.
So what did that do to your thinking? So again, generally, when we listen to in this way, our thinking tends to open up. We can take things more deeply than we would normally. What else? What's happening to your emotions, your feelings? Yeah, so it says feeling valued. Yeah. So generally speaking then, when we listen in this way, or we listen to in this way, we feel valued. We feel we ought to honour by speaking better, so to speak, and our thinking opens up. So the quality of the conversation rises when we use sustained attention in paying attention to another person, or to a situation, or to an idea. So sustained attention and focused attention are quite different, as you can see. And there is a place for focused attention, but it is not when we respond to something. However, we've all been taught at school, it turns out, to use focused attention most of the time. Hence, when I told my story, essentially you all responded using focused attention. But using sustained attention is by far the more effective way of engaging with those around us, improving the quality of the conversation. Now, a second very important aspect of sustained attention is courage is developed in a person-to-person relationship where with somebody who could judge us but chooses not to. So when we are listening using sustained attention, we are actually building courage in the other person, which means we are reducing their propensity to anxiety. So if we're doing this with each other, then we are building courage, we are reducing anxiety in each other. And as you're probably aware, anxiety is sort of rising everywhere within society. So this is a way for us to be able to manage that down. So sustained attention is really the way that we want to be able to respond, to be at our most effective, personally, and our most effective in engaging with those around us. Does that make sense? Good. So we're going to move on now to the next question. In fact, you don't miss anything. Everything flows into the brain. It's in focused attention that we miss things, because our conscious mind is interspersing with thoughts and memories, which is stopping us from picking up. With sustained attention, we get everything. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do retain it. Yeah, it all flows in. We retain it. We memorize anything that we pay attention to. Now, we don't necessarily keep it. We might lose it again. But in the moment, yes, we are taking in everything that's coming in. No, actually it makes you faster to respond. Because where all of this is going, essentially, is into our subconscious, or the right hemisphere, which is a much more powerful processor than our conscious mind. So it will process it and then offer up what we should say next. So a much more accurate, powerful process. Focused attention, which is why we fatigue after 10 or 15 minutes, whereas sustained attention, its name gives it away, you can hold for hours. So you can listen to somebody for an hour at sustained attention, but you can't do that at focused attention.
What role is focused attention?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. If you're doing detailed work, you really want to pay focused attention to that. So it definitely has a role, but not in responding to something. Responding, we want sort of a global, a sustained response. Focused is about doing stuff, about manipulating stuff. Good, time marches on, so we need to go on to the next area. And the next area, oops, wrong way. The next area is about how we frame what we're going to do next. And framing is really based on the belief or not that human qualities are either fixed or variable. People who believe that human qualities are variable have what's called a growth mindset. And a growth mindset says, no matter where I am now, if I put in the focus and effort, I'll be able to get better. So I'll be able to increase my intelligence, my sporting prowess, my artistic ability, if I put in the time and attention to do so, which is a growth mindset. And the opposite of that, and obviously that leads to learning, the opposite is a fixed mindset. The fixed mindset says, no, we have a certain level of ability, and it's fixed. And that can lead very easily to a sense of superiority. I can do this, and you can't, therefore I'm better than you. But more seriously, it can lead, or it does lead, to a need for validation. So I'm good at this, and so I will not take on difficult challenges in case I fail. So I'll continue to do easy things so that people say, wow, you did that really well, you must be really smart. So a fixed mindset leads to a sense of superiority, a need for validation, and avoidance of making mistakes and failures, which essentially is not learning. Now the research is absolutely rock solid here, that it is the growth mindset that is most useful for us to be able to move forward in the world, and that the fixed mindset really has no place to be. Now when our schooling system was set up in its current form post the Second World War, it was built around a fixed mindset. So although it's softened over time, certainly people of my generation were brought up very much with a fixed mindset and have had to adopt a growth mindset over time. And even today, 40% of maths students test out at having a fixed mindset. So chances are that within this room, at times within your day, even if you're generally growth mindset, you may well have elements of fixed mindset as well. Question? Yeah. Yeah. No, this is just presenting it in a different way. So fixed mindset says our abilities are fixed, they can't be changed. Other one says that they can be changed. So just with the person next to you, can you just share your own understanding and experience of fixed and growth mindsets? Just to get clear in your mind, I suppose, where you stand on this scale. Let's come back to the whole group again. So the recommended way to develop a growth mindset is to praise somebody for the effort or work they put in to do something. And the way to develop a fixed mindset is to praise somebody for being smart or talented. So there is actually a crisis with our children at the moment, in that they are being protected from making mistakes and being told how smart they are, rather than being told that the amount of work they put in is what's praiseworthy. So it's about our effort, is growth mindset, and our talent leads to the fixed, or belief that our talent is important leads to the fixed. So the third area then is we've responded to something. Sorry. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Carol Dweck, who's sort of the main authority behind all this, she says, yeah, well, why does the fixed mindset persist in society when it's so clear that it's not the way for us to go. And so there are stereotypes, there are labels, there are all sorts of little things that can create the fixed mindset. It may not be at home, it may be elsewhere that's taking place. But keep at it. Eventually it will change. So we respond to something, we frame how we're going to move forward, and then the next key area is how we're going to think about things. And thinking comes, we can think solutions focused, that is, something occurs, we framed it, and we're now going to think about how to create a solution that moves us forward. And the second possibility is that we think about the situation that we're in, the problem that we're in, and that can lead to a dwelling in the past as opposed to moving into the future, and also learned helplessness, as I'll show you in a moment how that comes about. Now, thinking is stimulated by questions, by the questions we ask ourselves and by the questions we ask other people. So we're going to go in now and look at how we ask questions. So this is next exercise is going to be an individual one, and if possible, if you've got something to write on, that would be good. If not, you can just sort of try and remember it. But you're going to write down a number of questions. So, if you bumped into one of your colleagues in the corridors in the office here, and they said, "I'd really like to be less stressed at work, but the tasks just keep adding up." And if you wanted to help them, if you wanted to be helpful to them, what questions would you ask them? So if you want to be helpful to them, what questions would you ask them? So can you write up to 10 questions that you would ask them if you wanted to be helpful to them? Now with the person next to you, can you just share the questions that you've been writing down, just to see what each other has been doing? And those who haven't been writing, just talk about the ones you've been thinking about.
Do you have enough help? Are the tasks necessary or valuable? What's managing well? What is getting completed and put away? So is staying up? And is the culture of the work culture? Yeah.
Okay, let's come back to the whole group again. Let's come back to the whole group. Now we're going to go through an elimination process and eliminate questions that aren't helpful. We're going to eliminate questions that aren't helpful. So first of all, let me say I'm making no judgment at all about the quality of your questioning. We're just going to remove questions that aren't helpful. So can you cross out or strike off any question that is offering advice, either implicitly or explicitly, such as have you tried or you should do? So next category of question is any question that focuses attention on the stress. And then it may not surprise you, the last set of questions is anything that focuses attention on the tasks. Now it's not, it's, yeah. So it's not unusual now for people to have no questions left, which is just an indication that our default forms of questioning are not especially helpful for other people. So first of all, let me explain why we eliminate these. We eliminate advice because advice simply has low efficacy. The fact that we think something's a good idea doesn't at all mean that it's a good idea for the other person. So it's just not very helpful to offer advice. Now, we remove questions focusing on the stress and the tasks because the fact that somebody has said this doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. So their issue might be of role clarity, for example, or their issue might be one of confidence. And if we ask questions about the stress and the tasks, we are corralling their thinking into about stress and tasks. And that might not be their issue at all. So what we want to do is to raise ourselves above that. So questions you've got left, does anybody want to suggest what might be a good question? Why? No, let's cut that short at the pass. Yes. What's important? That's definitely going down the right direction. Sort of down the right direction. Yeah. It's a good introduction question, and we need something with meat to take them further. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So again, a sort of an introduction question. Now, the classic question in coaching, which is about helping people to think better, is called the miracle question. And the miracle question says, if tomorrow everything was perfect, what would it be like? Now, the first time I heard that, I thought, how come that's such a good question? Didn't make any sense at all. And obviously we can phrase it differently. So we can say to our colleague, yeah, I can see you're in distress. In a month's time when everything is okay again, what will it be like? Is a way that we could phrase it in this. But now let's understand why it's important or why it works. When we look at this, or when we hear this phrase, we immediately jump into the stress and the tasks, as many of you did. But there is a third part to this, which is that I'd really like to be part. And to be helpful, we want to focus on that, on the person's thinking. And then there is a framework for thinking, and at the highest level of thinking is vision. We can only imagine a future different from today in the most advanced part of our brain, most advanced part of our minds. So if we ask somebody to imagine a future which is different from today, we are causing them to use that part of their brain. And the more that they imagine a future state which is much better than the current state, then the more they become confident, collaborative, and creative, which is the exact mind state we need to find a way forward from where they are. So if we can get people to imagine a future state which is better than today, then we're moving them into the right frame of mind to be able to do something. Next level down is planning. Okay, we've imagined this future state, so what are we going to do to get there? And again, planning requires the advanced parts of our brain to do. What we want to avoid then is asking people about the problem. They know what the problem is, and we don't need to know what the problem is to be helpful to them. And if we ask them about the problem, we're likely to re-trigger in them the thoughts and feelings that are associated with the problem. And the final level is the drama. You know, she said this and he said that, and I've been so outraged in my life. We definitely don't want to trigger that, because that will we won't get anywhere from that. So if we want to help somebody, we really want to get their thinking moving into the visioning and planning side of things. Does that make sense? Just nod and we move on. A question? Yeah, that's a very good question. When you're in a conversation with somebody, it's clear that they're stuck, and what is jumping into your mind are possibilities that they could move forward. The key is to distance them from yourself. What I've seen other people do in this circumstance is, and they give options, A, B, and C, and then throw it back to the person, what do you think of that? And often you'll think they should do option A, but in fact it's option B that triggers the greatest thinking for them. So in a sense, we're giving advice, but we're putting it in a way that's not advice-like. Yeah, because you've already got the vision, you've got the plan, and now you're thinking, well, what might get in the way, as opposed to being mired in the problem. Yeah. Yeah, two things. Sometimes people just need to vent, and if you listen with sustained attention, that's the best thing you can do, so they feel loved and listened to. But there are times when, you need to keep trying to raise them up to get them out of the being mired in the problem. And the simplest question is, okay, so how would you like it to be? How would you like it to be? Ad nauseam, until she knows what you're going to ask next time. Okay? So now I'm going to ask you some questions now. And what I'd like you to do is think about a situation that's occurred for you recently that involved other people and that didn't go so well. So a situation that's occurred for you recently, involves other people and didn't go so well. And I'm going to ask you series of questions, and I'd like you to answer those questions in the context of this situation that didn't go so well. And whilst you're doing that, can you monitor what's happening in your mind in terms of your thinking? Is it opening up or closing down? And your feelings, are they becoming more positive or more negative? Okay? Now, I warn you, in slightly more than 60 seconds, I'm going to change very substantially the mood of this room. But we will come back again. Okay? We ready? First question is, why didn't you perform as you should? What was wrong with your performance? Why did this happen? Where did it start to go wrong? Why did you do it that way? So can you share with the person next to you what was happening to your thinking and your feelings as you were answering those questions? Okay, let's come back to the whole group again. So what was happening to your thinking as you were responding to those questions? Well, that's really a feeling, but yeah. Yeah, it kept getting more negative, isn't it? Yeah. Isn't it amazing, huh? 60 seconds, and I warned you I was going to do this. I will make it nice in a minute. So it's the power of the questions that we ask in terms of the thinking, how it can affect the thinking and the feelings of the people that we're asking those questions to. So it's extraordinarily powerful. Yeah. That's right, yeah. In coaching, why questions are never used for exactly for that reason. Very hard to do without judgment. So, let's do the same exercise again. I'm going to ask you a different set of questions this time. So, same situation, and again, monitor what's happening to your thinking and feelings as I'm asking you these questions. So, first question then is, what aspect of this situation were you happy with? What did you learn from the experience? How would you rate this performance, say, out of 10? What rating would you be pleased with in the future? What would you need to do to move towards this preferred rating? So again, just share with the person next to you what was happening to your thinking and your feelings this time round. So let's come back to the whole group again. So again, a little more than 60 seconds. You can shift the mood, shift how people are thinking and feeling, which again I find quite remarkable. The questions we ask are so powerful in shaping the thinking that takes place. So if we go back to our little framework, then I think it's pretty clear that solutions-focused thinking is what we want. And so we want to phrase questions, imagining the future and planning for that future, and then phrasing those questions in a way that open up our thinking and raise our feelings in a more positive way. And that we want to avoid problem-focused. Now, we've all been trained, so So at school, we were trained to use focused attention. We were developed largely in an environment of fixed mindset. And as we saw, our default way of asking questions is largely problem focused. But if we want to be at our most effective, we want to be using sustained attention when we respond to things. We want to frame our approach through a growth mindset. And we want to use questions that trigger within us and in others a solution focus. Make sense? So with the person next to you, just want to clarify in your own mind what this means, and then any final questions or clarifications you'd like to ask of me before, in about 5 minutes or so, we bring this to a close. Okay, let's bring that back to the whole group again. So any final questions or clarifications around responding, framing, thinking?
How do you sustain attention in not a one-on-one environment? So if one-on-one could be, I'm not tuning out to you talking, most of the how do you do that?
It's just practice. In fact, nothing is different. You're just using a different form of attention, that's all. So, in a sense, I stumbled across this. I did a lot of coaching, and in retrospect, realised that I was using sustained attention, realised that I was seeing changes within myself as a consequence of that, and decided I'd use sustained attention in other situations as well. So when listening to presentations, for example, or in meetings. And at first it felt very unnatural to do, but then gradually it became more and more natural, to the extent that where I would say I use sustained attention now all the time, one-on-one, one-to-many. So it is in fact the normal way for humans to pay attention. And we only use focused attention because we were trained to do that at school, that's all. Yeah.
I got to let the words flow over me. Focus on the key words.
Yes, essentially those. And if you find your conscious mind beginning to come in, then just focus more on the other person. And the eyes trigger the right hemisphere, mouth triggers the left hemisphere, and sustained attention triggers the right hemisphere, focused attention triggers the left hemisphere. So that's the difference between these two attentions. And so by focusing on the eyes, we just enhance the possibility of... In fact, you've had times when, you know, you're having a really tense moment with somebody, you find it really difficult to look into their eyes. That's because our left hemisphere wants to maintain control in its judgmental, blaming way. But if we can raise our eyes up, then we trigger the right hemisphere, which triggers empathy and caring and so on. Mm. In fact, more and more, there's no saying somebody's right brain or left brain really makes no sense. This is all about which hemisphere triggers when something occurs. So, we give you the example of a bird. Birds have split brains like we do. You see a bird on the ground, it uses its right eye, which is connected to its left hemisphere, to find the seed amongst the grains of sand, and it uses the other eye to scan the world. If a shadow appears that could be a predator, which hemisphere do you want to respond? The one that says, oh dear, there's a predator, I should do something about this, or the one that says, oh look, there's another seed, I should go after that one. Clearly we want the right hemisphere to respond. And for humans it's exactly the same. We want the right hemisphere to respond. And that's really what this is about. The right hemisphere is the one that has a global view and that connects with other humans. We want the right hemisphere. You're right on both counts. Yeah. Yeah.
So as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm aware that I'm doing two things. I'm trying to listen to you, and I'm also trying to take notes. Is that splitting my attention? And how do we deal with desire or need to take notes with focusing on something?
We have 5 types of attention, and the 5th type, we haven't really mentioned all 4 of the others, but the 5th type is called divided attention, which allows us to do that, and it's not very effective really. I never take notes when I listen to people, but at the end I will write down, if it's important, what's been important during that. I'm not suggesting you stop taking notes, of course, but I find that for me that works that way. Yeah, and perhaps that's when you need focused attention. So forget, this is about responding. Something occurs, how do we respond to it? Somebody gives us negative feedback, how do we respond to it? We don't want to respond with anger and denial. We want to respond with acceptance. But today, most people would respond with anger and denial to negative feedback because that's what we've been trained to do. And we really want to get to the position where we can accept things because that's a much better use of our attention than that. So one final question, then we need to pull it together. And again, it is horses for courses. If you need to acquire information, which is what most of our education system is about, then that's what you need to do. But if you want to learn something differently, then taking notes is not necessarily the best way to do it. It's a much bigger subject, this one, about how we learn in the left hemisphere and how we learn in the right hemisphere, which we can't obviously cover today. And I'm conscious of time. It's 1:28. I always like to finish on or ahead of time. So I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. And I hope it's been interesting and useful to you. And so thank you very much.